On January 29, 2025, what began as a routine winter night in Washington, D.C. would soon become a night etched in the nation's memory forever. The city, blanketed in cold and quiet, was about to witness a catastrophe that no one could have imagined. At 8:48 p.m., American Airlines Flight 5342, carrying 64 people on board, collided mid-air with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, call sign PAT-25, over the frozen Potomac River. The helicopter was on a routine training mission, while the commercial flight was making its final approach. The collision was sudden and devastating, two paths of light and metal converging in the darkness with no warning, no chance for escape. In a matter of seconds, the lives of everyone aboard, both aircraft, were changed forever. Witnesses on the ground saw a blinding flash, heard a thunderous roar that echoed across the city, and watched in horror as burning debris rained down into the icy river below. The serene Capitol skyline, usually a symbol of peace and stability, became the haunting backdrop for a national tragedy that would leave a deep scar on the city's soul. Emergency crews rushed to the scene, their lights flickering across the dark water as they searched desperately for survivors. But the freezing temperatures and violent impact left little hope. Within minutes, it became clear that this was not a rescue, but a recovery operation. The impact was too severe, the water too cold. The brave first responders faced impossible odds, battling both the elements and the enormity of the disaster. News of the disaster spread instantly, sending shockwaves across the country. Americans everywhere watched in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how such a collision could happen in the heart of the nation's capital. The crash of Flight 5342 and PAT-25 became the deadliest domestic air disaster in the U.S. in nearly 25 years, a tragedy that would be remembered for generations. As the nation watched in disbelief, urgent questions arose. How could this happen here? What went wrong in the skies above Washington? The Potomac, once a symbol of the capital's calm and resilience, now bore silent witness to unimaginable loss and heartbreak. The tragedy set off a chain of events that would shake the foundations of American aviation safety, prompting investigations, reforms, and a renewed commitment to preventing such a disaster from ever happening again. Behind the headlines were 67 lives, each with a story, each with dreams, ambitions, and loved ones waiting for them to come home. These were people from all walks of life, united by a single tragic moment. Each loss left behind shattered families and broken dreams, with futures rewritten in an instant. The pain rippled outward, touching friends, neighbors, and entire communities. On Flight 5342 were business travelers, families, and a group of young athletes and coaches from a Kansas figure skating club, returning from a championship. For many, it was a journey home after a moment of triumph and camaraderie. Their hopes and futures vanished in an instant, sending shockwaves through their communities and the world of sports. The loss was felt not just by those who knew them, but by all who heard their story. The 3 soldiers aboard the Black Hawk were members of the elite 12th Aviation Battalion, dedicated to service and training in the capital's complex airspace. They were highly skilled, committed to protecting others, and respected by their peers. Their loss was deeply felt within the military, a stark reminder of the risks faced even far from combat. The Army family grieved together, honoring their sacrifice and service. The nation mourned together, flags at half-staff, memorials along the riverbanks, and communities gathering to remember those lost. Across the country, moments of silence were observed, as people paused to reflect on the magnitude of the tragedy and the lives cut short. President Biden addressed the nation, promising a thorough investigation and unwavering support for the grieving families. His words echoed the nation's sorrow and determination to seek answers. For those left behind, the days blurred into grief and uncertainty, each victim's name representing a world of lost connections, memories, and love that can never be replaced. The crash was more than an aviation disaster. It was a deeply human tragedy that would haunt hundreds of lives for years to come, leaving scars that may never fully heal. The nation's collective sorrow demanded answers and change. In the aftermath, a call for accountability and safer skies grew louder, as the memory of those lost inspired a renewed commitment to prevent such tragedies in the future. Investigators from the NTSB began piecing together the final moments using flight data, cockpit recordings, and radar. Flight 5342 was on a standard approach to Reagan National, guided by air traffic control. The Black Hawk, on a low-altitude training mission using night vision goggles, was supposed to maintain visual separation from the jet, but the helicopter crew lost sight of the plane, distracted and hampered by limited visibility. The air traffic controller failed to warn the jet's pilots about the helicopter's proximity, a critical omission. No evasive action was taken. The collision was the result of a chain of missed warnings and human error. The tragedy was not caused by a single mistake, but by a series of failures on all sides. The investigation revealed a system stretched to its limits, with fatal consequences. The NTSB's public hearings exposed deeper systemic flaws. Investigators questioned the Army's risk-taking culture and the inexperience of the Black Hawk crew. The helicopter's altimeters were found to be potentially inaccurate by up to 115 feet, a critical error in crowded airspace. The crew had also disabled their transponder's altitude reporting function, making the helicopter nearly invisible to controllers. The design of military helicopter routes near Reagan National was called into question, highlighting the dangers of overlapping flight paths. The investigation made clear this was not just pilot or controller error, but a systemic failure of procedures, equipment, and oversight. The findings demanded urgent reform in how military and civilian aircraft share the skies. The Potomac disaster became a case study in the deadly cost of complacency. 11 months after the tragedy, the U.S. government made a rare and stunning admission in court, one that would send shockwaves through the legal and aviation communities. For the first time in such a case, it accepted partial liability for the crash, acknowledging its own role in the disaster. The Department of Justice publicly acknowledged that both the Army pilots and the FAA air traffic controller had failed in their duties, and that these failures directly contributed to the catastrophic event. This was not just a legal formality, it was a public reckoning. The Black Hawk crew's lack of vigilance, combined with the controller's failure to warn the oncoming jet, were officially recognized as acts of negligence. These admissions were detailed and unequivocal, leaving no doubt about the government's responsibility. This admission validated the family's grief and cleared the way for compensation, sparing them a painful and protracted legal battle over blame. For many, it was the first time their suffering was truly acknowledged by those in power. The government's confession extended beyond individual mistakes, pointing to deeper, systemic failures in air traffic management and military oversight that had gone unaddressed for years. For the victims' families, it was a crucial step toward justice and accountability. It offered a measure of closure, and a sense that their loved ones' deaths would not be in vain. The admission marked a turning point, forcing federal agencies to confront their own shortcomings and commit to meaningful change. While no amount of money could ever replace lost loved ones, the government's acceptance of fault was a necessary first step toward healing and reform. The hard lessons learned from this tragedy would now shape the future of aviation safety, ensuring that such a disaster would never be repeated. The government's admission did not end the legal fight. While accepting some blame, the Department of Justice denied that the controller's actions were the sole cause, seeking to limit the FAA's liability. The family's lawsuit, representing all 67 victims, pressed for full accountability from the Army, FAA, and American Airlines. The airline denied fault, setting the stage for a complex legal battle over shared responsibility. The family's goal was not just compensation, but systemic change to prevent future tragedies. Public support surged, demanding transparency and reform from federal agencies. Advocacy groups and experts watched closely, seeing the case as a test of the government's willingness to learn from its mistakes. The outcome would shape not only justice for the families, but the future of aviation safety in America. The Potomac collision forced a sweeping re-examination of airspace safety over major cities. Lawmakers and regulators began overhauling rules for military and civilian aircraft operating in close proximity. New mandates require all aircraft, including military helicopters, to keep transponders and collision avoidance systems active in busy airspace. Training for pilots and controllers is being revamped, with a focus on the risks of sensory overload and the limitations of night vision equipment. The FAA is reinforcing strict protocols for issuing traffic advisories, eliminating dangerous discretion. Experts are debating whether military training flights should be allowed near major airport approach paths at all. Proposals for GPS-based highways in the sky are gaining traction, aiming to separate different types of air traffic more clearly. The memory of the '67 loss drives a powerful push for lasting reform. The Potomac air crash is a story of accountability and the urgent need for change. The government's admission of fault is a foundation for rebuilding trust and enacting real reform. Every air disaster yields lessons. This one exposed failures in vigilance, communication equipment, and procedure. The resulting changes in training, technology, and airspace management are direct responses to those failures. Public scrutiny and demand for transparency have been crucial in driving reform. The tragedy underscores that safety is a public trust, and when broken, must be openly repaired. As the first anniversary approaches, the legacy of the 67 lost is a safer future for all who fly. The new regulations and technologies born from this disaster will protect countless travelers. From the icy Potomac, a solemn promise: never again.